During my freshman and sophomore years of college, I was extremely awkward. I had just come out as gay. I didn't have any friends. I was generally kind of a big wad of social anxiety, given that I didn't even have the social skills to make new friends. It's not surprising that I literally had no dating experience. Miraculously, over the course of summer after sophomore year, I sort of grew out of the worst of my awkwardness. I lost some weight, had more confidence in myself, and my self-esteem was a lot higher. I came back to school in August, and by October, I had a decent number of genuine friends, and gotten a lot more involved on campus. With my newfound confidence, I decided I'd finally download Grindr to see what it was like. For anyone who doesn't know what Grindr is, it's a gay dating app that is primarily used to find sex and hookups. Despite my recent improvement in the social arena, I was still extremely naive and inexperienced when it came to dating and sex. I set up my Grindr profile with a nice picture of myself, a very brief bio. I got a lot of messages very quickly after my picture got approved. One guy messaged me had a display name of Dad for Young, which should have been the first red flag, but I was oblivious. I should note that I look really young for my age. At the time I was 21, but I was regularly asked by campus staff which middle school or high school I was visiting from. I'm 23 now. I still get asked if I want a kid's meal if I go to a restaurant with my parents. It's bad. So Daddy for Young sends me a message that just says, "What's up?" I reply without looking at his profile. Then I look at his profile and notice that he's 54. The only text on his profile says, "The younger the better," and the only picture was a zoomed-in blurred picture of a hairy chest. So I was not very much interested. But given my inexperience, I thought ignoring him would be horribly rude, so I kept responding. I don't totally remember what we talked about in the maybe 10 messages or so we exchanged, but I do remember him telling me I was very cute. I know I told him I was a student, but I never mentioned which college I went to. It's important to note that I went to college in a major city, and there's a bunch of different colleges within like 5 miles of each other, and few more within 10 miles of those. Sort of like Tinder, Grindr works based off your location, but much more precisely. If you're less than a mile or two away from someone who is online, it will display the distance in feet. I noticed that Daddy for Young's profile says he was 25 miles away, which I thought was kind of far. Daddy for Young started to get more sexual in his chats and asked if he wanted to meet up. I felt bad flat out denying him since he had been polite, so I told him I didn't want to meet up with him that day, but we could keep chatting if he wanted. I figured that was that, and when I checked 20 minutes later, it said he was offline. Nope. About 30 minutes after that, I got another message from him. "Hey, my name is blank. I got a wild hair and thought I'd take a nice drive out to my college." Smiley face. I had not told him the name of my college, nor had I told him what part of town I was in. I looked at his profile. It now said he was about 3 miles away. I started freaking out a little bit and didn't reply to his messages, in hopes that he'd just leave me alone. It's important to note that my college has a couple of different campuses, chunks separated by a few miles. I lived on the upperclassmen residential campus, which was about 2 miles from the main campus, where all the other students' dorms and buildings are. I felt like if he was going to try to find me, he'd go to the main campus first, and then maybe give up, since not many people outside know of the separate residential campuses. 5 or 6 minutes later, I got another message that says something like, "No fun if you don't play along what building on a residential campus name you are in." His profile now says he's 2,500 feet away. Every time I reopened his profile, the distance would decrease. I was fully losing my shit at this point, since the guy had the ability to pinpoint my location. So I shut my blinds, turned off my light, locked my window, and the door to the apartment, and my bedroom door. My roommate was also out of town, some kind of weird retreat, so it was just me. He kept sending me messages every minute or so saying things like, "Gonna find you, here I come," smiley face, and other supremely creepy shit like that. The distance was down at 310 feet. I was completely losing my mind and didn't know what to do, so I just deleted my whole profile. Nothing else happened that night. though I was absolutely terrified he was going to come knocking on my door. Fast forward 3 days later, I decided to reopen Grindr after doing some more research and seeing that I can adjust the settings so that my exact location is not visible. When I logged on the first time with the remade profile, I adjusted some of my search filters until the results were specific enough to display Daddy for Young's profile, which I promptly blocked. Later that evening, I got a message from someone with the display name, Will Find You, with the same gross profile pic as Daddy for Young. My stomach sinks. He sent a flurry of messages. You fucked up. I almost got the police called on me because of you. Couldn't find you, so I had to go to other dorms and find someone else. Said I was outside his dorm and told me to leave. He said he'd call the cops. I'm coming for that sweet virgin asshole. Freaked out, blocked him again, deleted my profile again, then deleted Grindr. I refused to re-download it or any dating apps for about a year after that, at which point I worked up the courage to try again. I have not heard from the nut job since, thank God. So terrifying old man with fetish for young, inexperienced guys. Please, let's never ever meet.
So this just happened today. Against my better judgment, at the beginning of the month, I got a Tinder. I matched with a few guys, etc. One of them is James. We ended up texting each other, and he seemed pretty chill and pretty into me. He's a decent-looking guy, and we seemed to click. He had apparently been in a relatively abusive relationship with a woman, and he was looking to start over. According to him, she had hit him with a frying pan and pepper sprayed him once. He kept going on about how crazy she was. Alright, it happens. We went out to the movies this past Friday, and I had a great time. We ended up talking for a few hours, and we hit it off pretty well. I asked about the ex because I was a bit curious as to why he'd stayed with someone like that. He didn't say anything positive about her, just that she was crazy, had mental illnesses, and didn't take her meds. That kind of stuff. She had tried to baby trap him, but she had a miscarriage. He expressed relief that she didn't end up with the kid. He said he had felt obligated to her. Again, I get that. In all, I had a good time. The morning rolls around and he tells me that he had hooked up with his ex last night and that he was going to try and work things out with her. Mildly insulting that I lost out to an abusive chick, but whatever. I tell him it's cool. He then, a few hours later, texted me to say that she was crazy and he thought she was changing, but she wasn't, blah blah. He kept asking if he could see me. He was being very pushy about wanting to see me today. He begged for 5 minutes of my time so he could explain to me. I politely told him that I didn't want to be involved with someone who was so clearly hung up on his ex. This is where it got nuts. He admitted he still was, but that he wanted to see me today so I could meet her and she could determine if I was better for him than she was, and that she wanted him to be happy because he and I had a connection. I flipped after that, told him the fact he needed his ex to determine who was right for him was absolutely nuts, and that it is not what love is, and that I wanted no part of it. His ex started texting me after that, and it was non-stop insults and incoherent shit that made no sense. She almost dropped the bomb that she was his wife. I told her to fuck off basically and blocked the number. I went on Tinder to message him where I called him a piece of shit, and if he was intelligent he would leave her and never message me again. He started to harass me, saying that I was miserable because they have had a beautiful love together and all this crazy shit. He then went on to say, "My wife knows where you work. I hope she doesn't do anything rash." And I told him if that was a threat, I would gladly go to the police. He then said that she's been to jail before, she's not afraid, and that she loves him so much she'd fuck anyone up and risk jail for him. That she'd kill my friends if they tried to protect me. That she's armed and dangerous. I told him goodbye, reported him, and deleted my Tinder account. I did go to the police tonight, but since it wasn't a direct threat, they can't do much. The cop thinks that James was more or less full of shit and just trying to scare me, since some people love getting off on that shit. He said I did the right thing by blocking him and reporting him, and said I should just keep my eyes open and alert the people at my job. Scary thing is, James seemed perfectly normal. But he lied about being married, how he felt towards his wife, and he flipped like a switch. His excuse for not being upfront about being married was that they were going to get a divorce. He seemed so docile and unassuming, and the hatred and aggressive attitude was insane. I have to honestly wonder what would have happened had I gone to talk for 5 minutes. I'm kinda concerned since they do know where I work, but if either of them try anything, then the cops can actually nail them. What a weekend.